Welcome to a double
and
dice
with your host Kim
and Jocelyn.
Pour your favorite beverage,
Pull up a comfy chair,
because we are ready to roll.
Welcome to a double
and
dice
with your host Kim
and Jocelyn.
Pour your favorite beverage,
Pull up a comfy chair,
because we are ready to roll.
Welcome to episode 93 of a double and dice, and today we are wrapping it up and putting a bow on it as we wrap up the Gen Con that happened, which we're kind of late about because it's been 2 weeks now since
I mean, at the time the podcast comes out, it'll be 2 weeks since it ended.
Yeah, but we're gonna wrap it up, put a bow on it. Jocelyn's gonna talk all about what happened on that day.
I mean, I'll do my best.
If you remember.
I do.
Okay.
I'm ready to rock. I can walk through the whole thing. Does everybody have 4 days? I can walk through it minute by minute. No, okay.
We'll save all the other stuff for the board game podcast.
Oh, okay. Is that a new one that we're doing? Because I haven't heard about that yet. Is that just you and Jordo?
I don't know. It's called Playing on Saturday Nights.
Oh, okay.
Is that our board game podcast?
It's called Only Games, but
it's been a while since we actually played. Well, I was on vacation, and then Jordo's.
You were. Where'd you go, Kim?
I went to BC, British Columbia, another province in Canada.
On the left coast, as we like to say.
Yes, the west coast. Yep. Out in the island. So we had to fly, take a boat.
Oh, you took the ferry.
Yes, took the ferry, drove the car in because we rented a car.
I wasn't sure if you had a direct flight like into Victoria or if you had to take the ferry or not.
No, we flew into Vancouver.
Mm-hmm.
And then we stayed in Vancouver because we didn't want to fly and drive and do all that in one day. So we flew in and then rented a car, spent the day there. It was a tiring day already anyways. Then we took the ferry over, which was like an hour and a half to the island, and then drove another 2 hours, let's say, to where we were going.
Cool.
Yeah.
So and you had a good time.
Yeah. It was a good time, yes. Very nice weather. It was cool.
Yeah.
The sun was still hot, though, but it was cool. I did have to pull out long pants.
Wow.
In the summertime, I pulled out long pants, long sleeves.
Well, I mean, you said before we started recording that you think you like Newfoundland better.
Yes, which is out in the east for those.
That's on the right coast. And you would definitely need long pants there because it's always cold.
Well, yes. But yes, I do prefer Newfoundland. And then this trip is probably second or third. I still like my down south trips where it's beach.
Mm-hmm.
So Jamaica is one of my top ones up there. But yeah, so I've been out east, I've been out west, I've been in the middle.
You're all done. You gotta go north now.
Yeah, I gotta go to the north. You're right.
I haven't been to the island in British Columbia. I've spent quite a lot of time in British Columbia because my sister lives out there, right? So I've done like a day trip to Seattle, and we've gone up into the mountains and things like that. But the island is something I've never done. So, and we've been to like the desert and the wineries and all that sort of stuff. So BC is a beautiful province, and it's a little bit of everything. There's a desert, there's a rainforest, there's an island, there's all kinds of stuff going on there. And it's beautiful. I'd recommend that people go and check it out at some point.
Yes, there's anywhere you go, north, south, east, or west on that province is beautiful.
Yeah.
If you like 100%. To ski, go there.
If you like water sports, go there.
Yeah.
If you like forest fires, go there.
Actually, you know what? I don't know how the forest fires were going on. There was all like bans, that obviously no fire bans, but no smoke. Didn't feel it at all during that whole week.
Yeah, I don't know what the fires are like on the island right now, but I know the interior of British Columbia has been having a really rough season. And that's common for them. They have like fire season in the summer, but it still sucks, right? So
yeah. But the air was good. We didn't experience anything.
That's good. That's awesome, Kim.
So yeah.
So you're on vacation, or you just got back from vacation?
Yes, at the time of this recording, yesterday.
And as we are recording, some people might notice, if you're attuned to the voices, you'll notice that I might sound a little bit different, and that's because I am not on my microphone today. I am on my old school Bluetooth headset. And that is because I am recording this from a secret location in Ottawa, which is our nation's capital.
We're all over the place.
I'm on a work trip. So I drove in this morning and now we're recording this podcast. But there's many adventures to happen before my trip into Ottawa this morning. So should we get right to it, Kim?
Yeah, let's go.
All right, Gen Con 2023. So yeah, I went. Rob came with me. And we went to Gen Con. We had a few things planned. So we were going to fly in on Wednesday. We had booked an Airbnb a little bit out of downtown, but closer than the one that we booked last year when we went to Gen Con. So it was a little bit closer, a little bit nearer to things. And it wasn't so much a food desert that we had in 2022. There was like restaurants nearby that we could walk to, and it was a nicer area. So all's well and good. It's Wednesday morning. We're both done work. We finished work on Tuesday. I'm getting ready in the morning, and I look at my phone and I realize I've missed a call from Rob. It's like 7:30 in the morning, and then I see a text message from Air Canada, and it said, "Your flight has been canceled."
Uh-oh.
So I called Rob back and I said, "So our flight's canceled?" He's like, "Yeah, like what's going on?" So anyway, it was funny because I'd gotten up that morning. And one of the things I like about the Air Canada app, sidebar, not sponsored, is that you can click on the incoming flight and it can tell you the status of the incoming flight, if the incoming flight's delayed or on time or what's going on, right? And the incoming flight that was supposed to take us out at 2:00 in the afternoon was showing as delayed until like 4:30, but our flight was still showing as on time. I'm like, well, that's kind of weird. Now, I have seen this happen before, and usually what happens is they change the plane or something and things get adjusted. But in this case, they just canceled our flight entirely, and they said more information to follow soon. So we waited about 15 minutes, and we got a text message and an email with a revised flight that would have us leaving Thursday afternoon at 2:00, flying through Chicago instead of direct flight, and not arriving at Indianapolis until about 6:30 p.m. on Thursday.
Do they not tell you why they cancel their flights, or just cancel it on you?
This one was mechanical issues.
Oh, so they didn't have another plane.
Yeah. So we put our heads together and we said, well, in theory, we could drive this thing. So
drive what? The plane?
No, the car to Indianapolis. So we did.
Did you rent a car or did you use your own?
No, I took my own. Yep.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So we got we packed up the car and we hit the road, and it took us, so it should have taken approximately 8 hours if you don't ever stop or have any issues. Of course, we have to cross a country border, so that's going to have a slight delay because you have to talk to the customs agent. And I don't know anyone that can drive 8 hours without, at least needing to use the washroom at least once, and perhaps eat food. So we did make a couple of stops. We didn't like rush our way through, but we got there it was just over 10 hours it took us to get there. Fortunately, our Airbnb had parking available to us. There was a garage so we could park in. We didn't book it because of that, because we were flying and we weren't going to rent a car, but we just thought, whatever, it's a nice place, we'll give it a try. So it turned out really good that we had the car parking. And so we got there, and by the time we got there, Nick Wally, aka Jackalope Spam, aka WizKids Judge Extraordinaire, was already in town. We've been messaging with him and our friend Petrus from Ottawa, who was also in town, and the two of them had connected up and had some dinner, and they'd already picked up their badges and everything, and Rob and I were heading down to get our badges, and jokingly I sent them a message and said, "Hey, you want to come stand in line with us while we get our badges?" And we went downtown, we found somewhere to park. He's like, "Yeah, we're already in the line waiting for you." So they had actually gone down there and started waiting in line for us in the will call line so that we wouldn't have to wait as long.
Oh, so you line jumped.
Well, we traded spots.
And nobody said anything?
No, people were doing all the time. People were hanging out in line with their friends. So they just went into the line, and the two of them went into the line for the two of us. And then when we got there, they just swapped out. So that was like super nice. And then they hung out with us the whole time while we were picking up our badges. And then Petrus went back to his room, and Nick and Rob and I went and grabbed a drink and some snacks and hung out for a bit. So that was Wednesday. So a big long drive. A a long, the line wasn't that bad. I think we stood in the line for about half an hour, and I think Petrus and Nick had been in it for about 10 or 15 minutes longer than that. So it was about 45 minutes when we got there on the Wednesday night to get our badges and our tickets, and now here we are. Now that we're ready for Gen Con, we've got badges, we've got tickets, and we've got events to go to. So Thursday, Gen Con's 4 days. Thursday we did a Dice Masters draft in the afternoon. There were 14 people in the draft. It was listed as sold out, but some people had accidentally bought multiple tickets. So yeah, 14 people. Nick got to draft with us. We did a pot of 6 and a pot of 8. I fortunately was able to pull a super rare Invisible Woman. So nice. I went 1-1. My first game was against Craig Hubner, friend of the podcast, past guest of the podcast. I don't remember what he was playing right now, but I can tell you that none of my dice rolled. I think in the entire game, including sidekicks, I only rolled about 3 characters. So I lost that game. We did 2 rounds in the draft. We played a second round just for fun because we had time. That was what they did. They set the drafts up for 2 hours. So I played against a newer player, Quinn. And I did manage to win that one. It was very, very close, though. He had me on 1 life, and I had him on 2 life. He had marginally, he thought he had it, and he swung in with everything, and he'd miscalculated slightly. So I was on 1 life, he was on 2 lives. The next turn, I was able to take him out. But it was a very close game.
What did he play?
It was good. I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry. That was like over a week and a half ago. I don't remember what they were playing. But he was playing something to do with action dice. Was there a magic? Is there a magic in Secret Wars that you can field a sidekick if you play an action or something?
There are action.
Yeah, it was something to do with action dice, and then he had Shocking Grasp and I had Shocking Grasp, so we had 6 Shocking Grasps between us.
Wow.
And I was running Super Rare Invisible Woman, a bunch of cheap stuff. It took him a little while to get to that thing that he needed for the magic, but then once he got there, he got a big swing in. It was actually a pretty synergistic team that he built. It was great to see him and I think it was his brother was there. And then of course, some usual folks. There was me, there was Rob, there was Craig Hubner, Petrus was there. I can't remember if Petrus played in that draft or if he just dropped by. Anyway, there was a bunch of people, some new faces, some established faces, and we had a good time. And then we hung out. We walked around the vendor floor a bit. We visited with some other friends that we have for Dungeon Crawl Classics, the role-playing game that we play. And we had a good time on Thursday. Now there was another draft on Friday and there was a draft on Sunday. We didn't participate in those because we had other events. We had on Friday morning we had a role-playing game, Dungeon Crawl Classics, and on Sunday we had a role-playing game for Dungeon Crawl Classics as well. We played a couple of different games in there, but we did participate in the big event on Saturday, which was Dice Masters Worlds at Gen Con 2023. So we had 14 players for Worlds this year, and Worlds was an open event. We've talked about it, 1,400 times, Kim?
We talked a lot about Gen Con.
So you just had to show up and pay your participation fee, and it was maxed at 16. So we did manage to get 14. For the very long time, there was only 13 players signed up, so it was great that we got 14 and there wasn't a buy. So there was some familiar faces to the in-person Dice Masters competitive scene. Of course, Ben Scott came over from the UK. There was the Mississippi guys. So 3 of the Mississippi guys came. There was Dwayne, there was Ian, and there was Charlie. There was Lucan and Arj, of course, from Rollin' Thunder.
Which they dropped an episode I saw.
Yes, they dropped an episode. They recorded lots of live recording, and both myself and Rob were interviewed for Rollin' Thunder. So if you're not following Rollin' Thunder, it's rollandthunder.xyz, no apostrophe, no G. And you can find them wherever you get your podcasts. It's a great episode. Arj did a great job putting it together. Who else was there? So then you had Craig Hubner, of course. I mentioned Craig. He was at our draft. So those are all folks that you see at regularly at competitive events. And Petrus from Ottawa, who I also already mentioned. Then we had Elliot, who has played a lot online. You might have, if you play online, you might have played Elliot. He's a really good competitive control player. He came out in person to play, which was great. We had a guy named Michael who was from Arj and Lucan's local scene. So he was sort of just getting back into the game relatively recently or something like that. So he came down to Gen Con to play. We had Scott, who I didn't actually get a chance to talk to, but he also is a newer player. I think from what I understood, if I understood this right, Scott had played Dice Masters a long time ago, and he showed up to the draft and then built a team out of his draft team so that he could play in Worlds. And that was how we got to 14. And then we had Alex Coos, and Alex is a HeroClix player who is working on building he wanted to learn Dice Masters. He did what he was calling the Try WizKids tournament, hashtag not stolen from Harry Potter, and he wanted to play in D&D Onslaught. He wanted to play in Dice Masters. He wanted to play in HeroClix. So he went to a D&D Onslaught qualifier. Qualified for their Worlds, which was being held at the same time as Dice Masters. So he had to make a choice. He participated in a HeroClix qualifier for their Nationals, which would have been Saturday afternoon. He did not qualify for HeroClix Nationals. And then he chose to play in Dice Masters on Saturday with us. And that rounded out the 14 folks that were playing in Worlds. And then, of course, Nick was judging. So do you want to guess who I faced in the first round, Kim?
Rob.
You got it. It was Rob.
You always face him, it seems.
I always face him at some point. First round, though, is a different one. So we talked, I think, about my team on the last episode, and I went with that team. I didn't make any changes to it. So I ran, the idea was it was a Thor team. It had some anti-Master Mold tech. It had some, you brought a Master Mold? Well, guess what? I brought a Master Mold too, and I'm going to use all your tools to beat you with your Master Mold. That was the idea. So I put some cards together. It was a fun team. It was very interesting. What was most interesting was that, including mine, there were only 5 Master Mold teams out of the 14. And we expected that number to be a lot higher. Spoiler alert, top cut 3 of 4 Master Mold teams.
Oh, wow.
So, so first round, I got paired against Rob, and this is the way. This is always the way. And of course, we've practiced against each other a lot. He was playing an optimized Master Mold team, similar to what he played last year in Memphis, but he changed out a couple of cards. One of the big changes he made was he put on Mr. Fantastic Brain Box, the rare from Secret Wars, that forces. Pardon?
Great card.
Great card. When you field it, your opponent chooses an affiliation, and then they choose 2 dice to KO that are not that affiliation. So it's a good way to get rid of Sentinel tokens, a good way to do things. So he built a cool team, a variety of a Master Mold team. Well, I managed to get my Master Mold going faster than his, and I actually managed to beat him with his Villainous Pact. So that was exactly what I had planned to do. My plan was, if you have a Villainous Pact and a Master Mold, I'm going to buy my Master Mold and I'm going to beat you. And if you don't have a Villainous Pact and you're not playing Master Mold, if you're playing something else, unless it's Colossus, because my rare Colossus did better against. I did better with Master Mold against rare Colossus than I did against Thor when I played Thor. So those were the 2 matchups that I was going to buy my Master Mold in. So 1-0 going in. Rob's 0-1. They're only taking the top 4, so you really have to do well. There were several games that were being played very control-y that went to time, and we actually had ties in Swiss, which is not something I've seen, and certainly not something we saw last year, as the meta was moving very, very fast. But as we had predicted in the last episode, the introduction of Distraction Global and some additional control pieces that were available made it a little bit easier for games to go a little bit longer into time and turns and still not be completely finished. So the rule was we were playing best of 1 in 30 minutes. At 30 minutes, we would go to turns 0, 1, 2, 3. And at the end of 3 turns, if the game was not definitively won or lost, if your opponent had not gone to 0 life, then it was considered a tie. So those were the tournament rules. So there was like, I think, several ties in the first round, and then we got to round 2, and I was paired up against Arj from Rolling Thunder. Arj was playing a rush team, and if you want to listen to a little bit more detail about Arj's team, I'd encourage you to go over and listen to that Rolling Thunder podcast. because he talks a little bit about it, and he wanted to play it because for those of you that are part of the online community or part of the LA community, you are familiar with Ronathan Hopkins, and he passed away suddenly within the last year from a heart attack. And Rush was a team that Ronathan was really supportive of. He was really on board with Rush from the very beginning. And he wanted to play something to honor Ronathan. So he built a super cool Rush team with basically just the idea just overwhelm your opponent with dice. There was a couple of cool things on there. He's got some pretty cool tech on the team. And what I should have done was I should have bought my Thor. That was what my plan was, right? This is not a Master Mold or a Rare Colossus team. Buy Thor, right? Win with Thor. Right. That's the plan. Dice said buy Master Mold. That's what the dice rolled. So I had 2 bolts. I had 2 shields. Whatever happened with my dice, I think I could have purchased the Thor, but then I couldn't have prepped it. But with the Master Mold, I was able to purchase it and prep it. So I was like, you know what? Let's just try it out. And it was a dumb idea. There was no Villainous Pact on the boards. There was no way for me to get damage through. He was putting all sorts of dice in the field. They all had low defenses, so they could get KO'd. But I wasn't able to push any damage through. Like, I didn't have any way to do that. So we ended up stalling. Like, it didn't stall, like we were playing actively, but we went to time. And then in turns, I think it was actually on turn 3, Arj was able to get me down to 0 life. So now I'm 1-1, and it's going to be a little bit harder for me to make top cut. So, round 3. Would you like to guess who I got to play round 3, Kim?
Ben. I'm good.
Ben is correct. You are good at this guessing game. So Ben was my round 3 pairing. He was 1-0-1 because he had a tie from his first round, and I was 1-1, 1 win, 1 loss, and no ties. And of course, Ben was playing Master Mold. So Master Mold comes out again, and that's the plan. Now, I had probably the worst 3 rolls on, like, my first 3 turns were the worst combination of energy at all ever. I couldn't prep, I couldn't sinister enough, I couldn't purchase a poison ivy, which is a good anti-master mold tech, because when it's fielded you can field plant tokens, when they attack you can field plant tokens. I couldn't buy a master mold. I couldn't even buy a Thor if I wanted to buy a Thor. Like, there was I was just like, I have to hold on, right? So I don't even remember what I did, Kim. I literally don't remember what I did in those turns. I just remember making what I felt were the best decisions in the moment and thinking I'm going to regret these later. Eventually, I was able to get my Master Mold. Ben had his Master Mold. He was a little bit ahead, but he wasn't, like, ridiculously ahead.
Okay.
It could have turned had things changed. However, he was pretty far ahead. He was able to take me out. What I had done in that game, though, was I did buy an early Villainous Pact before he'd even bought his Villainous Pact, which made him sort of rethink his strategy. So at the end of that game, we did end with the win going to Ben. So now I'm 1-2, and there is literally no way I can make top cut at this point. But that's fine. That's all good. That's part of the game, right? So Ben and I chatted after, and he said that you had a really rough first 3 turns. I'm like, yep. I said, I don't know if I did it right. I don't know if I did it wrong. I don't know if there's something I could have done better. And he's like, no. He's like, I don't think you could have done anything differently. You did the best you could with what you had. And I don't know. He's like, I don't know that I would have done anything differently. He's like, that was literally down to your dice rolls. And if your dice had rolled differently, then I think that game could have gone very differently. And I agree, right? But that's the game. It's a dice rolling game, and sometimes the dice don't roll.
Yep.
So I dropped my way down the table, not all the way to the bottom, but I was sort of middle bottom. So below the middle of the table. So played against Ian Porter from the Mississippi crew. It's always fun to play against Ian. Interestingly, last year, Ian was my last game in Worlds as well, in Swiss rounds, except I beat him in Swiss rounds, and in this time, he beat me. He was playing this really cool team. He had, like, anti-monitor that KO stuff. He had the rare Batman. I think he had a super rare Jubilee on there. It was like a super cool mishmash of a team. I can't remember if he had Typhoid Mary or Drax, but he was able to prevent me from purchasing my Thor. My Master Mold wouldn't have done anything against that team. I think I ended up buying a rare Dark Phoenix. Just because I could. Because neither of us were making cut, right? We knew that. No matter what happened at that point, neither of us were making cut. So
Yeah.
we're like, let's just have a fun game. Let's do stuff. So I mean, we tried. We didn't not try. Like going into that, he was 1-1-1. I was 1-2. But you know, funny story with that win and the way the strength of the schedule went, and because of the ties, he actually came in 5th place. And I came in, what is this? 14,
Ninth?
13. Nope. 14, 13, 12, 11.
Okay.
Yep, 11th place. I mean, there were ties because of points and things like that. So, but yeah, so.
But nobody went 4-0, right?
Nobody went 4-0. So at the end of Swiss, Ben and Dwayne were both 3-0-1. So they were tied for basically first, essentially. And then Petrus was in next place with a 3-1 record. And then Michael, who was running the off-meta team from Arjun Lucan's group, he was running Starro Frontline. He managed to take 4th place. So you had Ben's Master Mold, Dwayne's Master Mold, Petrus's Master Mold, and Michael's Starro in Frontline. The other Master Mold player was Rob. Rob ended up, let me count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th. And his last round was against Michael. So at the beginning of the game, we thought, okay, like, you know, I won against Rob. Rob lost. You know, maybe I have a better chance. Nope. Went the other way. Rob ended up 2-2. And I ended up 1-3. So sometimes that's how the dice roll. But yeah, so he played Michael. Michael had the Starro Frontline. He was playing Michael in that last round, and Michael was able to pull it off. He was rolling sidekicks like golden sidekicks, like they were just like magical sidekicks, all rolling sidekicks, and he was able to do it. And he stole some of Rob's sidekicks he was keeping in the field because of Master Mold, and surprised him with a big fat Frontline and took him out. Rob was like, "That's cool. Like you built a really cool team, and it went off, and that's awesome." So yeah, so that was the final standing. So Ben, Dwayne, Petrus, and Michael. So Ben played Michael. Dwayne and Petrus played each other. And Arj has a really great, summary of how that went. But basically, Dwayne and Michael did go 3 games in their rounds within time. Ben won the first game. Michael won the second game decisively and very fast. His team went off perfectly. And then in the third game, Ben did manage to take it. But so it went to Ben. And then against Dwayne and Petrus, something very interesting happened. So their first game went so time on Top Cut, you do best of 350 minutes. Okay?
Okay.
And when you hit time, it's 5 turns. So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mm-hmm.
Their first game took 43 minutes.
Oh my gosh.
So they had 7 minutes left in time. And the tournament rules say that whoever wins decisively the most number of games in time is the people that win the round. So Petrus had 7 minutes to win a game, and he did it. He won the game in 7 minutes within time. So then at that point, we had to say, well, what happens next? Because now you have a tie within time. So we had to go to the tournament rules. It looks like some of the tournament rules were missing. There was some reviewing of notes. People were messaging people, do you remember what happens in this? And ultimately it was Nick's decision, right? So we all helped by providing Nick as much information as we could, and then he made the decision on what was going to happen next. So what he made the decision was it would be a sudden death style game. They would randomize who went first. They would play 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 turns. So whoever went first would be turn 0. Whoever went second would get the last turn. And whoever had the most life at the end of those 5 turns would be the winner of the round.
That's a good one.
If they were tied at the beginning of the round, then it would continue to go 1 turn at a time until first damage. So that was the decision that was made at the time. So they did. They randomized. Petrus chose to go second. Both of them went into their master mold plan, which is surprising to me. Like for me, I would have probably gone for cheap characters or sidekicks to try and just push some damage through. In the first turn, Dwayne, because he went first, he rolled 3 sidekicks and he was quite disappointed by that. But ultimately that made the difference because he was able to, on his last turn, push 1 sidekick through to Petrus's empty field, and then Petrus didn't roll his master mold, so there was nothing he could do, and he couldn't get the damage through, and Dwayne won. So Dwayne went on to the final. Dwayne's one of the Mississippi guys, super nice guy. Really glad to see him make it to the top 2. And him and Ben played their game, and I don't remember if it went 2-0 to Ben or if it was 2-1. But Ben did win ultimately, and our congratulations go out to Ben Zed Scott, who is the 2nd-time world champion. He was the world champion back in 2019. So congratulations to Ben, and I'm sure you'll hear all about Ben's experiences on his podcast at dmUnited.eu. So that was World. It was a good time. I did stay and watch some of the games and chat with some of the other players when we got to Top Cut. Like some people scattered and did other things when they were finished playing. No one dropped at all throughout the entire tournament. Everyone played all their rounds, even in the drafts. Everyone stuck around and played their drafts. It was super fun to hang out with these folks that we've hung out with in the past and have played games with and have conversations. It's great to go to these conventions and hang out with folks and have a good time. So we had a good time doing that. So like I said, there was another draft on Sunday. Apparently the drafts were super fun. They were all in the range of like 14-ish players, so not quite sold out, but pretty well attended, and a good mix of new faces or returning faces, or maybe faces that people that play the game that we don't necessarily know about, that don't come to big tournaments or don't play online. Yeah. So there was some folks like that, and then of course established faces like we talked about. Me, Rob, Arj, Lucan, and Craig, the Mississippi guys. Charlie Cates was in town. He had come to Gen Con. He came down to say hello to everybody, but he had other events on his schedule, so he wasn't able to participate in Dice Masters this year. But overall, it was a good time. So probably the newest player, like I said, I wasn't so well. Scott was the guy I think that built his team out of his draft product. But I think he'd already played before or had some information about the concepts of the game. And then the other new player was Alex from HeroClix, like we talked about. So Alex talks a little bit about his experience learning how to play Dice Masters. Again, he played it like when it first came out, ABX, but didn't really get into it like he did HeroClix, on his podcast GWiz. So if you're interested to hear that, Alex has started his own podcast where he's talking about, he calls himself WizDad, and like it's like a persona for the podcast, and he talks about D&D Onslaught, HeroClix, and Dice Masters. So he's putting out episodes. You can find them on YouTube. WizDad Games, I think, is his channel, and you can also find him on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And it's GWiz is his podcast, WHIZ. So yeah, so he just put out an episode today as we're recording this about his experience playing Dice Masters. He has an episode about his HeroClix. I haven't listened to that one yet. And then he had an episode about Onslaught as well. So he's sort of just building that up. So if you're interested in checking that out, from a newcomer's perspective, it's interesting. He is a relatively competitive HeroClix player. He plays meta HeroClix. So it's interesting to hear sort of how he sees things and how he's equating things within Dice Masters to HeroClix and vice versa. So yeah, check that out if you're interested. But Alex, so we trained Alex.
Yes.
So we did. We were his put me in coach, right? So Alex reached out to me a while back. I know him through HeroClix, through the HeroClix community. He's part of a podcast that does specifically meta HeroClix called Clicked Off as well. And he reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm thinking about learning how to play Dice Masters. Can you teach me?" So I said, "Sure, like let's do it." So I sat down and walked him through the fundamentals one night online. He lives in Tennessee, and so we went through that, and then we talked a little bit about strategy, and he heard about the super rare Black Panther because I went on vacation to Italy. And I said, I can't continue to coach you because I'm moving and I'm going to Italy and I got all this stuff. So I said, hey, Kim, do you want to meet this friend of mine, Alex, and help him learn to play Dice Masters because he wants to play Dice Masters at Worlds? So she said, sure. So she sat down and she, swamped him with his with the super rare Black Panther, not with the actual alternate win condition, I think. Is that right,
No,
Kim?
yeah, it was all 6. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but he's like, that's super cool, and I like alternate win conditions and HeroClix, so I want to play that. So we built the team with him. We helped him with it. We sort of coached him through a buy order, and I lent him some of the cards he didn't have. I couldn't give him Typhoid Mary because I was using Typhoid Mary, so I lent him my Drax. Of course, I lent him the Super Rare Black Panther. He didn't have that one. A couple of the other characters that he needed, I think I lent him four characters. He had the rest of the team, and we did I think one or two practice games before the WizKids fan appreciation event on the Friday night. And so he got the feel for the event and he got to play. So his first round was against Craig, and he did manage to pull off the super rare Black Panther win condition in that game in turns.
Nice.
So congratulations to Alex for pulling that off. It was cool to see. And he had a good time. He really likes Dice Masters. He thinks it's a really cool game, and he's right. More people just need to know about Dice Masters.
Yep.
So one of the newer players, and check out his stuff if you're interested.
Cool. Did you actually play any board games when you were there? Or just DCC and Dice Masters? We
did not. So we ended up, we did some socializing. We went out for tacos a couple times. One night we went out with Arj and Lucan and Petrus, and then another night we went out with Arj, Lucan, Petrus, and Nick for tacos. That was Sunday, and then Saturday was without Nick. Nick didn't come that night. We went out for pizza one night with Nick and Petrus and Rob and I. So there was a few sort of last minute things. We didn't plan anything. I think that was Thursday that we all went out for pizza. Some folks were looking around on Friday for stuff, but we ended up, there's a long story. So I'll see if I can make it short. So we talked about DCC, Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's a role-playing game. Kim and I play with Rob and some other friends some nights through the internet on Roll20 and Discord and such. So there's a group called Gaming Honors. They're like a third-party publisher. They publish adventures that they write and create art for in Dungeon Crawl Classics, and also Dungeons and Dragons 5e. So they're compatible with both. So we met them last year. Rob has been following them on their Twitch. So they're on the Goodman Games, which is the company that publishes DCC. They're on the Goodman Games Twitch channel every couple weeks on a Sunday night, and they do a game called Honor Among Thieves. Spoiler alert, they had the name before the D&D movie did. So anyway, so they play, and they're sort of teaching people how to play Dungeon Crawl Classics and teaching people about the system, and helps them, with their modules and things like that. So it's kind of a cool thing that they do. So we met them last year. They're super nice people, and we've been following them along on Twitch. We participate in their Twitch streams, and we were talking on one of the Twitch streams about food, and I had mentioned that, I was doing some sourdough baking at one point. And I haven't done it in a while. It was mostly during the pandemic. The starter's still there in my fridge. It's still alive. I could start baking bread again when I have time. I might just need to do a couple of feedings to get the sourdough back up to snuff. And they were talking about bread as well, and they said we should do a bread swap at Gen Con. Well, of course, at first I thought I was flying. I was like, I can't take something across the border. That's not going to happen, especially on an airplane. So I was like, what can I make when we're in Indianapolis to give them as a gift, right? So I was like, I can make my chocolate chip cookies. I think you've had my chocolate chip cookies, Kim.
I think so, yes.
With the big chocolate discs in them. And they're super awesome, especially if you warm them up. When I say they're my chocolate chip cookies, they're not mine. They're Bon Appetit's recipe. But I have sort of perfected them over time and adjusted the recipe slightly to my own tastes. And I'm very happy with what I've done with it. The great thing about the recipe is that it doesn't require any fancy tools. You need a baking sheet. I like parchment paper just because it makes cleanup easier. A spatula. You need some bowls and a spoon and maybe a whisk. So I was like, I can do this. Now, baking, Kim. Baking is a science.
It sure is.
It is not an art. It has artistic flair. You can make things look pretty. But it is a science first and foremost. It is a chemical reaction in order to get the baked goods to be the way they want to. And what we know about science is that exactness is important. Okay? If things are like off a little bit, you can get a completely different reaction. So being precise is very important in baking. So I've gotten into the habit of weighing all my ingredients instead of using like measurement cups.
Okay.
For more precise measurements, which allows me to make more consistent batches of cookies. The Airbnb had everything I needed to bake cookies except for a measurement scale. And I couldn't find the whisk, which is weird because it was right on the counter in front of me. So anyway, I made the first batch using measurement cups of cookies, and they tasted really good, but they didn't look pretty. I didn't feel comfortable like taking them and presenting them as my best work to these people who had made us a beautiful loaf of banana bread, Kim. Like it was this lovely, they had given us t-shirts for their channel. We went there on Thursday, and then they gave us this beautiful loaf of home-baked banana bread that they had baked the day before for us that we were able to eat while we were in Gen Con. And I was like, I can't present these sad-looking cookies. I need to try again. So I ended up spending another night trying to make the next batch. The next batch turned out pretty. They tasted the same. They just looked nicer. So we presented those cookies to the people that gave us the lovely banana bread. I took the first batch of cookies, which tasted delicious. They were just a little crumbly. And I took those to Dice Masters, and they were very well received there. So I made 2 batches of cookies in the Airbnb while we were on vacation.
Yeah, that works.
And we ate a lovely banana bread. So anyway, so we did that. And, if you are interested in role-playing, or if you've heard of D&D, or you haven't heard of Dungeon Crawl Classics, you've only heard of D&D, role-playing is a lot bigger than just D&D. I really like Dungeon Crawl Classics as a system. It's a little bit more streamlined, I guess is the way to put it. It's not as, I don't want to say it's not as complex as D&D. It's not, because I think there's lots of complexity to it as well. It's not like it's going to be a boring game or a simple game, but the mechanics are a little bit easier to work with, and it's really designed on, your judge. In D&D, I think they call them dungeon masters or game masters. Your judge is the ultimate decider of what works. Like, here's an adventure and here's our suggestions, but ultimately it's up to you. Do whatever you want. And that's pretty cool, right? So
yeah.
I would encourage you to check out the Goodman Games Twitch channel and find the gaming honor stream, Honor Among Thieves, every couple Sunday nights.
Okay, so you didn't play any board games. You baked cookies.
I baked cookies.
You played DCC. You played Dice Masters.
We hung out with people.
You hung out with people. You socialized.
We did end up playing Fantasy Realms.
Good board
that's the name of the card game.
There you go. You played a board game.
So on Sunday, we headed over to the WizKids booth, and we bought some HeroClix exclusives. So if you've never been to Gen Con, a lot of companies have exclusive stuff.
Yeah.
So what they do is at the beginning of the con, you're supposed to show up at like 10 o'clock when the floor opens and like rush the doors and like get injured with people elbowing you and stuff. And then you're supposed to get to the event of the booth that you need to be at, and they give you a ticket that's timed, and they say at this time you can come back and purchase your convention exclusives. And the idea is that way there isn't like huge lines everywhere, right, and people can move around. But by the end of the weekend, they don't care anymore because they just don't want to pack the stuff up and take it back. So Sunday afternoon, we went over to the WizKids booth and we said, hey, can we buy convention exclusives for HeroClix? And they said, yeah, absolutely. We're sold out of Space Ghost and Hawkeye, but you can buy what's left. So we bought a Mer-Batman and the Wonder Woman trio. And I said, oh, I don't need a bag, because I had like a bag. And they're like, oh, but there's free stuff in the bag. And I said, oh, well, in that case, I will take the bag.
Yes, take the bag.
So he's like, okay, and he put the stuff in the bag and handed it to me. So when we got back to the Airbnb that night after tacos with the team, with the folks, Arj, Luke, and Nick Petrus, and ourselves, I said, let's figure this out. So I pulled out this deck of cards, and there was like a paper score sheet, and apparently there's an app you can get. So It's just a deck of cards is all it was. And it's just a card game, and you're building combos with the cards, and you add up all your points. And some of the cards have positives, and some of the cards have negative. And you add up all your points at the end, and then the highest points win. So it's pretty straightforward. It's only, I think, how many rounds is it? At the end of every turn, you have to discard a card.
So 10 cards in the lineup.
Yeah, so when there's 10 cards left in the discard pile, then you end the game. The cards are discarded face up, and you can take from the discard pile. It's typically designed, it says, for 3 to 6 players, but Rob and I just played it with just the 2 of us, and it was fine. I'm sure it would probably be more fun with more people. We played 3 rounds. Rob is currently winning the Fantasy Realms tournament, 2 games to 1, but that will not stand. So there will be more tournaments, and I will take the lead at some point. So it was a lot of fun. We really liked it. It's a cool little, like, I guess it's sort of D&D themed or fantasy themed anyway.
Yeah.
The cards have different, like, suits, basically, like lands, and there's people suits and all kinds of stuff. Anyway, the art's really nice. So it was cool. We played that. So that's a board game we played.
They made a Marvel version of it.
Oh, yeah.
Called Marvel Remix. It's practically the same game, except it's Marvel version.
I've heard of Marvel Remix, but I did not realize it was like Fantasy Realms.
Yeah, it says right on the box it's like Fantasy Realms taken from whatever they say. But yeah, it's pretty much the same game except in Marvel version.
Yeah, it was cool. I liked it. We had fun playing it. It played relatively quickly. Like, it's not one that's going to take hours and hours to play.
Right.
It was like a nice little snappy game. So
cool.
I think we played those 3 rounds like within an hour. And that included me reading the rule book to try and figure out how it worked. So
and I guess
it was a fun little quick game. Easy transport too.
So it came in a box, right?
No, it's just a deck of cards.
Oh, okay. So just give you a deck and the score sheet, and that's it?
The deck was in a box.
Oh, okay.
But like a deck box, it looked like a deck of cards.
Oh, okay. So it didn't actually come in like the official box.
No, it was just a deck of cards and score sheet.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't remember if there was anything else in that bag right now, but that's all I remember.
That's pretty good.
So we played that, if you call that a board game.
Yeah, it is a board game.
Yeah. So.
And I guess the only one final thing was fan appreciation.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah, was that a thing? Was it a thing for Dice Masters, though?
So, okay. So I'm going to talk about this like I've gone to Gen Con 400 times, even though it's only been twice, including this year. So typically, WizKids does a fan appreciation event on Friday night at Gen Con. Apparently, it is a long-standing tradition, and the entire 2 years that I've gone to Gen Con, they've done this. So it's Friday night at 8. It's in one of the conference rooms, usually upstairs at the Indiana Convention Center. You have to get a ticket for it. It is free. It does usually sell out, but because it's free, people don't always show up to take advantage of their tickets. So usually you can just like show up and wait, and then they'll let you in if there's space. So it was scheduled for 2 hours from 8 till 10. I think I mentioned that I played some practice games against Alex while we were waiting. So we got back up to the convention center. So we went back. I baked a batch of cookies. We had a bite to eat, and then we went back to the convention center. Played a practice game or two of Dice Masters. I played against Alex. Rob played against Craig Hubner, and then we went into the fan appreciation. So the first 45 minutes turned into a Q&A. Now, typically, Kim, when do you do a Q&A, when you do a presentation?
Usually at the end.
Yeah, at the end. So they had some technical difficulties. They had a presentation deck that they wanted to share, but they were missing like an adapter or something wasn't working. They couldn't get it to run. So instead of fumbling around while they figured that out, they sent one guy to sort of figure it out, and the other people hung out and just decided to do Q&A. So because it was not really in the order they'd planned it, it was very sort of sporadic and of the moment. So basically what the guy said, and at this point we didn't know the guy's name because he hadn't introduced himself yet. He said that the plan was to go through some HeroClix spoilers, some HeroClix information, some D&D Onslaught information, and some board game information. Conspicuously absent from that was anything about Dice Masters. So Dice Masters fans in the room, there was myself, there was Rob, there was Petrus, Craig was there, Craig Hubner, as well as Nick. Alex was there. He was there primarily for HeroClix, but he was there and he was playing Dice Masters. So there might have been some other people. There was a smattering of people that were interested in D&D Onslaught. They sort of did like a show of hands. What game are you here for? And that was that. So he hadn't introduced himself. He just started taking questions. So we're like, well, we'll ask some questions. So some questions were asked about, what's the plan with Dice Masters, and Dice Masters isn't on the agenda. So this gentleman said that Dice Masters, quite frankly, was not selling the way they expected it to. It wasn't performing to the level that they were hoping for it to perform at. It wasn't achieving the goals. That he understood that there had been several attempts to revitalize Dice Masters over the past few years, and that none of them have been particularly successful, that he would like to revitalize Dice Masters. So, at this point in the presentation, I'm disappointed that Dice Masters isn't on the agenda, but I'm appreciating that he's being open and honest about it when he's asked a question, right? Because this is the first time since I've been paying attention to WizKids competitively that anyone has said anything about Dice Masters sales and that they're not where they want them to be. Now, we on this side of the table, who are not presenting, particularly those of us in Canada and internationally, we generally have some challenges getting product. Would you agree, Kim?
Yeah. Though Secret Wars was okay. But...
Secret Wars is okay. We were able to get Secret Wars. But like our friends in Calgary, like Matt, they couldn't get Secret Wars.
Yeah.
They ordered Secret Wars from our game store in Mississauga.
Yeah.
Because they couldn't get it locally. So supply has been a challenge for that, and we weren't able to get more Infinity Gauntlet. We weren't really able to get much extra Superman or extra Dark Phoenix. We were able to get what we had pre-ordered in advance, but it was very difficult to get extra. So, and we have a very supportive game store owner, and he does have Secret Wars draft packs available on his website. If you're interested in purchasing a display, you can go to itsgametime.ca, and he does ship to most countries. So he has some supply available if you're looking for it. You can't find some. So anyway, so he mentioned that sales weren't there. So on the outside looking in, if we can't get product, we can't buy it. If we can't buy it, then you can't make sales. Seems like a pretty simple solution. Figure out how to distribute the product. But I'm not here to tell WizKids what to do. And this gentleman was being very open and honest, and he was being, like, I want to revitalize it. He says, I'm new to my role. I've only been in this role for 3 weeks.
Oh my God, you get thrown into Gen Con.
Yeah. But he said, I'm hoping to have more information, in a few weeks, and it's on the agenda for us to talk about what the next steps are. Another question was asked about House of X. House of X is on solicits. It was just postponed. There was no announcement. And he said if it's on the solicits, we intended to distribute it, that they're currently in conversation with their distributors about House of X and distribution. So we hope that, he didn't say this part, this is me saying, we hope that House of X is going to come out. So it sounds like, in theory, House of X is going to come out. He mentioned that they may be looking at other IPs for Dice Masters. So I think that's good news for the community who's been looking for other IPs, because it's mostly been Marvel with a smattering of DC. We haven't seen anything new or different since WWE or D&D or I don't even know. What else do we have? Turtles, Warhammer, Yu-Gi-Oh, things like that. But there hasn't been a lot of new IPs lately. So he says they're considering new IPs. They just they're not really sure, but they are hoping to revitalize it. So I'm pretty positive, Kim, generally. I'm a pretty positive person.
Yeah.
Particularly about Dice Masters. I give WizKids a lot of slack and give them a lot of rope and let them sort of do their thing. And I just sit here and I try and be positive, and I try and encourage people, like, yeah, eventually they're going to ban Master Mold, or they're going to come out with an answer to the watch list or whatever. And there's been a lot of great things WizKids has done lately. Okay, they created the comprehensive rules document. They've been answering rules questions in the win. They redesigned the Secret Wars cards. I really don't think that they're walking away from this game. I think that they went from a blind model. They tried the draft packs. They tried the gravity feeds. They went to the LCG. COVID didn't help. Supply issues didn't help. They redesigned. They built the comprehensive rulebook, all those things I just talked about. I think they're trying to figure out what would happen next. So although I was disappointed we weren't on the agenda, I really appreciated that this gentleman took the time to answer our questions openly and honestly, because a lot of the times you get the corporate answer. And when I'm not doing this podcast and playing Dice Masters and HeroClix and other things, I'm the corporate person that gives the corporate answer. So I get it, right? You can't always say stuff. But he can, because we found out that his name is Jake Tice, and he is the VP of WizKid Games.
Oh, and he's only 3 weeks into
the VP of the games.
Oh, wow.
So he has been with WizKids on contract for a number of years. I think he said maybe 3 years. And then just 3 weeks ago, he got this permanent job as the VP. So he's still getting his feet wet into the role. So he was informed, and he knew what he was talking about because he's been around WizKids for the past few years on contract. But now he's in the role, and he's hoping to make some change. So hopefully that's a really good thing for the community. He seemed open to conversation. I did go up and chat with him at the end. They, stayed at the front of the room and were open to questions, like one-on-one, when the event was over. So I popped up and I introduced myself, and I said, I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your candor about the event, and I'd really love to chat with you more about what the community can do to help, because we have this fantastic community of people, Kim.
Yes, we do.
People like you that run Weekly Dice Arena almost every Tuesday.
Yep.
And try to run a dice social once a month, but no one shows up anymore.
Summer break was hopefully in September.
Yeah, hopefully come the fall it'll pick back up again. I think it's just a little harder now than it was during the pandemic, because people have things to do on weekends because nothing's closed anymore. But there's online tournaments happening. There's tournaments happening at the UK Games Expo that are being run by Chris Williams from the Ministry of Dice and Andy from the Ministry of Dice. There's online tournaments. There's interest in the game. We're, just looking at Gen Con and seeing those new faces that we haven't seen play this game, and say, oh, I used to play this game, I didn't know it was still around, or I'm super glad to hear that I can play this game, or I love the new card design. There was so much conversation about that. It's a great game, and if you go listen to Alex's podcast that I mentioned about Gee Whiz, he talks about how much value you get within this game. Like, just a draft pack is really good value for what you pay for it, and it's collectible, and it's shiny, and it's new, and it's pretty, and it's a game that's really not like anything else, because you have dice and cards, and it's collectible, and you get to build your team, and there's a lot of variety available to you. So it really is a very unique game. So I'm really hoping that Jake and the team, which includes Jimmy from WizKids, are going to be able to find some way to hopefully revitalize the game, whether it be a new IP, a generic IP, more DC, Marvel, D&D, whatever. If they keep making it, I'm going to keep buying it. So.
Yep. My only question would have been to him, which I find very odd, is that they make this origin pack.
Mm-hmm.
Intended for new players.
Yes.
But you don't advertise it at Gen Con. You don't have people signing up to come learn to play with an origin pack. I don't understand that concept at all. That doesn't, how do you not think about that as a marketing point? You know what I mean?
So, we
you
don't
made
know
it.
that they didn't think about it.
You made it.
We know that they made the decision not to do that.
Yeah.
We don't know why. So, and we may never know why, no matter how candid Jake was in that conversation. But I think if you look at Onslaught, they ran a ton of events for Onslaught. But the only reason they were able to do that is because they have a third-party company called Baldwin Games, and they did all of the work. Right? So all of the D&D Onslaught stuff was happening not in the Indiana Convention Center, but over in the JW Marriott, where a lot of the D&D stuff was happening. And all of the competitions and qualifiers and learn to plays and battle royals and everything was happening over there. Baldwin Games was handling that. So I think there could be, and again, I'm just supposing, there could be a resource issue. They don't have enough people to do all of these things. HeroClix is having a bit of a resurgence. HeroClix has had some attention paid to it by WizKids, and they have, made some changes to the rules, the sculpts, the sets that they're doing. They've tried some new and interesting mechanics, and the players are responding to it. But also a lot of what's happening competitively with HeroClix is happening outside of WizKids, not separate. WizKids is involved, but like HeroClix has this company run by a gentleman called Howard Brock. He runs what's called the Rock Realms Open Championship, and he is managing the states and provincials competitions. So if your local store wanted to run a national, like not a national, a states level event or a provincial level event like we have in Canada, like Ontario provincials, Quebec provincials, whatever, you did it through Howard Brock. And Howard Brock has connections at WizKids, and he owns a store. And he was able to get all the pricing and everything, and you bought into the kit is how it works. So the store buys into the kit. The store holds the event. They would do it with their own local judges and what have you. And WizKids is basically just providing pricing. You know, Howard Brock and the Realms Open Championship are the ones really running the show for that. If they weren't doing that, then states and provincials wouldn't be happening. So, you know, someone has stepped up in the community and has volunteered to say, hey, let me help you run this, and we'll do that. So WizKids is running nationals events. Those are things that they're holding. They did Canadian Nationals is coming up. By the time this podcast comes out, Canadian Nationals for HeroClix will be over. It's this coming Saturday, and it's being held in a suburb of Montreal in Quebec, where there's quite a large HeroClix scene. And I don't know how many players they have. They have made it an open event, so if you want to play, you just have to go and pay your participation, just like you do at Gen Con for World for Dice Masters. So they're running nationals, they're running worlds. At WizKids, they ran Learn to Plays, they ran a pulp event, which is a new format they came out with, a theme event, which is a new format they came out with. They run battle royals, which are like sealed competition events, and then they ran their nationals, U.S. nationals qualifiers and tournaments. So that's quite a lot of work for the folks that were there and the volunteers that participated, and they were very busy, and it was good. And I think that they could have sold more, because like all of the HeroClix qualifiers sold out. WizKids did have slightly more space this year than they did last year. So hopefully that will continue to grow and we'll see more things there. So maybe they need to retool before they make the decision on what Learn to Play for Dice Masters looks like. Maybe they need more volunteers. Maybe they need a company to say, hey, I can help you with this. Let's build an agreement. I don't know.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I think marketing is something that WizKids needs to look at, because there has not been a lot of awareness around the packs, the new Secret Wars redesign, or anything like a year ago. They did a little bit, right? They launched it on our podcast. We got to put out the spoilers. There was stuff like that happening within the community, but there wasn't really anything that I saw outside of the community.
Right. Yeah.
Right. That doesn't mean it wasn't there. It just means I didn't see it. So.
Who knows?
So I feel like we should be hopeful. I feel like, the game is still out there. It's still playing. There was still folks playing at Gen Con. There was still conversation about it at the fan appreciation event around it with the Q&A. They didn't just say, oh, we're not talking about that. They answered some questions, which I think was really good. So the rest of the fan appreciation event was D&D Onslaught, HeroClix, and a couple of board games. Apparently, rebuilding Seattle is the hot business.
Is that a board game?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Apparently, it's going to be on everyone's top 20 board game list at the end of this year, is what I'm hearing.
Interesting.
So you might want to check that out. Yeah. You like board games, Kim?
Yeah. Actually, WizKids do not make bad board games.
No, the few that I've played that we've played around with that WizKids has done, when I join you and Matt on the channel from time to time, they're a lot of fun.
Yep.
So they also do a lot with D&D minis, and now they're doing the Onslaught. Maybe this means D&D Dice Masters might come back.
Maybe. I would love to see a new IP, though.
Maybe they can talk to Dungeon Crawl Classics and do a DCC to Given Games, do a DCC version. So, yeah, new IPs would be great. I don't know how much it costs to get licenses for intellectual property like that, or the amount of work and effort that goes into it, but I think we have reason to be hopeful. Like I said, I was a little bit, dejected and sad in the meeting, in the presentation when Dice Masters wasn't on the agenda. But because he chose to answer questions and took questions from the audience about Dice Masters and was open and honest and shared, like, I really do appreciate that. I want to thank Jake for his candor, his honesty, being friendly, being open to conversation, listening to the community, having that opportunity. So hopefully, in the coming months, we'll hear more.
Yeah, and when is House of X supposedly supposed to be released?
I think it said November.
Okay. So before Christmas.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully. That would be nice.
By the end of the year, we hope.
Yeah, I think it was November. I could look it up.
Yeah, I can't remember.
So yeah, and there was quite a lot of conversation around the fan appreciation event. I didn't like X it or Instagram it or Facebook it or anything like that. If you're not on the Dice Masters online Discord, you may not have seen the updates, but I did post the questions and answers that we got from Jake in the Discord. There was quite a lot of conversation about it, some positive, some maybe a little bit more the sky is falling, Dice Masters is dead. If you're interested in that, you can head over to Dice Masters online Discord into the Gen Con chat and read back all of the messages.
Cool. There is hope.
And that's it. That was Gen Con, and then we drove home on Monday. We got home in 9.5 hours, and that included we took a pit stop in Toledo, Ohio for lunch, and we went to, at the last minute, my Google Maps said, take the tunnel, not the bridge, and I missed it, and I took the bridge, and we ended up stuck on the bridge at the border for like half an hour. So considering that, we did really good getting home in 9.5 hours, and it felt like a much shorter drive. So
yeah, if you're entertained during your drive, you're pretty good. At least you weren't by yourself.
Yeah, Rob was there, and we had podcasts to listen to, and we had, Dice Masters and HeroClix to talk about, and all kinds of stuff. So, so that's that was my Gen Con, and no news on any other official events at this time. But I do want to do a quick call out to Mike Pugh. Have you seen this, Kim? I know you just got back from your holidays.
Probably not. I know who you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about.
So Mike is sorry, it's not Mike. I apologize. It is Matt Appleton. I have mixed up the two of them. So Matt Appleton has been posting on Facebook in the Dice Masters Unlimited Facebook group, and he is trying to create a Dice Masters event in England. So he has created what he's calling the English Open.
Nice.
So the date has not been confirmed yet, but it is going to be on a weekend in the second half of September. They're going to run a constructed event with the theme. I think it's single affiliation. More information to follow. And they've got a venue confirmed, which is the local game store that they've decided on. So I think the best place to find information about that is the Dice Masters Unlimited Facebook group. So if you're interested in that, head over there and learn about that. So yeah, the venue is going to be something called the Dice Tower I'm going to pronounce this wrong because I'm not British. Basingstoke. I don't know how to pronounce that. And it'll be like an afternoon event, and the format's going to be single affiliation, any set, no bands. So
nice.
So yeah, so if you're in the UK and you want to get some in-person Dice Masters in, reach out to Matt Appleton, head over to the Dice Masters Unlimited Facebook page and get the info. I think they're building a challenge, sign up, and you can participate in that in-person event.
Yeah, we'll link it in the show notes.
Yeah. And then if anyone happens to be in the Memphis area on the weekend of September 16th, perhaps on exactly September 16th, maybe around 4 p.m., you might find me at Graceland playing Dice Masters. So the Memphis Worlds, the HeroClix and Onslaught Worlds events are being held at Graceland between September 14th and 17th. Dice Masters isn't on the agenda, but I'm going to be there. I might play Dice Masters. So if you're around, or if you can get to Memphis in a reasonable amount of time, if you're in a driving distance and you want to come hang out and play some Dice Masters on Saturday afternoon, let me know.
Cool. Anything else?
No, I think I'm done talking now. My voice is sore.
All right. Well, there's that event happening. Breath Weapon X Fest 6 is happening on August 26th. So that's a Saturday, one-day online tournament. One card. And Rob corrected
20
me.
dice.
One card, up to 20 dice. You might not have 20 dice of a character, you know.
Proxy.
And could you imagine how much basic action dice you might have for a character? Rob corrected me because I suppose in the last podcast I said 3 costs were banned. It is not. It's 3 costs and less than 3 costs are banned. So 1 and 2 costs are banned. 3 costs are not banned. So anything 3 costs plus, and I think backs are open. So yeah, should be interesting. I haven't even thought about a card yet. They do have
we
some
have to
other...
work on that, Kim.
I know, a card. I have 1 card to choose from. How many cards do we have in Dice Masters?
Too many.
And I believe there is a banned list of cards that you cannot use. So just make sure to check out their site. That'll also be linked in the show notes. The weekly Dice News happens every Tuesdays, as normal. As Jocelyn said, Dice Socials hope to return in September. Because, summer break. Mm-hmm. And there may be other tournaments happening. So obviously we'll let you know if anything comes up. Light dice bag. Since you talked so much, Jocelyn, I'll do dice bag today.
Before you jump into the dice bag,
yes.
Kim, I'll just let you know that. So for the cards for the Breath Weapon X Fest, it's 3 costs or higher.
Mm-hmm.
So excluding basic actions, there are 3,381 cards available.
So
less whatever the ban list is. And then your actions don't have that price limit, right?
Your action cards? I don't think you're allowed actions.
Basic.
Is there? Is it? I thought it was only like
basic
characters.
Actions.
Oh, right. There's no limit. No.
So there's 323 basic action cards. If I can't include actions, if it's just characters between 3 cost and higher, 3,235 cards.
Yeah, good luck.
So happy building.
I think I'll just choose a 3 cost card.
That's something to consider.
Yeah. But nothing's really jumping in my head right now about kind of what I want to use. So dice bag is light.
Yes.
Very light. We talked about not so Gen Con last podcast. Again, Nick said this is a great listening post event, and hearing how wrong some of it was. Ha ha ha. And then obviously Collector Rob said prediction of Jordo. He I think predicted correctly. I think you both did.
Yeah.
I didn't.
Master Mold would win.
Yes. Yep. And 3 out of the 4 teams were Master Mold.
They were.
Yep. And that's it. So Dice Bag Light. Thanks again, Jocelyn, for saying all the Gen Con stuff that happened. I will try to plan it for next year. Yay. I will try not to do vacation around that time. I don't know what my vacation's looking like next year, but I'll try to avoid the dates.
Would you like the dates right now so you can mark them in the calendar?
Go for it. Beginning of August.
Oh, I can't find them on this. I know I said them last time. So Gen Con 2020 is going to be, here it is, August 1st to 4th.
Right. So that means the 5th would be our holiday here.
Yes.
The Monday.
That is correct.
All right. I'll do my best. We'll see.
You like tacos, right, Kim?
I do. I had tacos when I was in BC.
In BC?
Uh-huh.
I will take you to the taco place. Rob and I found this taco place last year, so we went back to the taco place this year with Arjun, Lucan, and Petrus. And then the next night, they sent us a message, so we're going to go back to that place for tacos again. You want to come? And they took Nick this time, and then we went and met them for tacos. The tacos were so good that we had to go back there twice in a row.
Nice. Yes. Tacos are good. Actually, I'll eat anything. I love food, and I'll try anything, so...
Yeah. We had some lovely wood-fired pizza as well, and some great bagels. Like, there's really good food in Indianapolis.
Yeah, maybe I might
Last year we
consider
went to this,
actually
like,
driving instead of flying. We'll see.
the driving wasn't too bad. I think that if we drove again, because of where we're coming from, I would split the drive into 2 days. So instead of leaving on Wednesday and driving for 10 hours, I would probably leave Tuesday night and get to like Windsor, like to the border, spend the night, and then cross the border the next morning and split the trip in half, basically. I would probably do it that way. And do the same thing on the way home, because on Sunday, everything ends at Gen Con at 4 o'clock. All the games end, the dealer hall closes, like exhibition hall closes, everything. So it would be really easy on Sunday night, especially if you've driven down from Canada, from Toronto area. You could like load up your car in the morning, check out of your Airbnb, and then just like grab some dinner and then hit the road and do the same thing, like drive to the border, maybe stay in Detroit, and then cross the border in the morning. Or if you're feeling good, cross the border and then stay the night in Windsor or whatever.
It's gonna be on a Canadian time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
we'll
instead of spending the extra, like, it was nice to spend the extra night to be chilled out and not to be rushed and things like that, but it did make the following day very long with the 9.5 hour drive. I know it said it felt like it was short, but then by the time you get home and you have dinner and there's no groceries because you went away for 5 days and you got to find groceries at the grocery store and all kinds of stuff. So I'd probably do it that way. It's doable.
Yeah, and you know,
lots of kids there, Kim. You could bring Noah.
No, you'll see at the grandparents. But Dave will come. I'm
Cool.
sure he will. Yeah. So, no, I don't know. No to Noah. No. It's too busy for him. He gets distracted and gives up in things very quickly. So.
Noted.
Even though he might be 8 at that point, still, I would not. If there was a video game section, he'll be there all day.
Yeah, it's not really video games. I don't think there's any video games. It's all like board games and role playing and tabletop and collectible magic and things like that.
Yeah, so he won't, unless he's magically into something next year, that like a card game or something like that. Then maybe, but as of right now, no.
Well, just mark those dates off on the calendar.
Okay.
Tell Dave we're going to Gen Con,
All right.
and you're good to go.
Deal.
All
right.
Awesome. So, should we hit it and quit?
Let's do it.
So if you enjoyed this episode, or if you wanted to provide any comments for our dice bag, because we love hearing about your thoughts, we want to hear about your Gen Con experience if you attended. How do you feel about what I've shared or what you've heard about the fan appreciation event? What do you think the future of Dice Masters could look like? Any ideas or thoughts or anything around that? You can reach out to us in all of the following places. You can send us an email to triple-dpodcast@dm-north.com. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, X, whatever it's called now, at dmNorthTV. You can find us doing live board games and other things on twitch.tv/dmNorthTV, like Weekly Dice Arena on Tuesdays. And you can also find our videos on youtube.com/dmNorthTV. So until next time, on a double on dice.